We're going live now on YouTube. Welcome to another episode of Global Business. I am your host, Dr. Neva, and I am a global leadership strategist. And I give you global experience from my International Women's Conference, my global leadership retreat, and so much more. Yes. Today I have a fabulous guest with me. And she's also a leadership strategist, right? We have Dr. Shanisha Davis. I think I almost said it right, and I said it right or something so close. But
You did
guess
it
what?
right
She's
so
going
many
to
times.
introduce herself to you all. Welcome, Doc.
Thank you so much, Dr. Neva. I am Dr. Shanisha Davis. You were really, really close. And as Dr. Neva shared, I am a leadership strategist. I specialize in leadership development grounded in emotional intelligence. I have been in education for over 15 years. I've been in school leadership, network-wide leadership, and now full-time entrepreneur. And I'm very, very happy to be here with you all today.
Yes, guys, she took I call it the risk of being an entrepreneur. You know how
Yes.
that goes, right? But we do have our specialty or expertise, right? We want to share with the world. And well, that's how I totally feel, right? So, let's dive right into it. Doc, what was a turning point for you in your career when you realized that
Mhm.
knowing isn't the same as leading? Because we're going to really talk about leadership today. So, when was that turning point for you?
I think that it is an ongoing, right, turning point. I I've always been a learner. So even as a child, my family and friends would actually make fun of me because I wanted an encyclopedia set when I was when I was very young. While most people were asking for toys, I really asked for an encyclopedia set, and I love that encyclopedia set. Had the World Book, and I would read it. Right, I would choose a book to read until I read it throughout. So I always collected facts. And I think that that was really important for me. But, you know, knowledge itself can be stagnant, right? A fact, unless something changes with that fact, a fact could be stagnant. And when you're working with people, right? People, society, things are always changing. We're in a constant state of evolution. And it was returning from the pandemic where I think it really hit home. Working in Black and Brown schools, there was always a learning gap between right our schools and schools with traditionally white counterparts. And that gap had always existed, but I realized after the pandemic that, oh no, this gap had exacerbated, right? And then I realized we are going to continue to have to solve problems that we don't have knowledge for yet. So, in inspiring others to be able to solve problems, I realized you can know as much as you want to know, but unless you're a learner, you're always going to be behind because the knowledge we have is for the problems that we've already solved. But for the problems that are coming up, we don't have that knowledge yet. So unless we're in a constant state of learning, especially if you're a people manager, you're always going to be left behind. You're always going to be behind the eight ball.
I love the fact that you brought up knowledge, and I'm a big believer in that, right? So you and I also share the same, like the doctorate that we have, right? It's educational leadership, and we're all about the learning environment, right? So And I love the fact I laughed, I giggled when you mentioned the encyclopedia because I think I went through that. I remember, my mom brought the entire thing and it's supposed to make us smarter, right? For me, I went through it because I really wanted to learn. And so just hearing you talk about that, sharing that same similar experience, I should say, with, you know, learning, knowledge. So, but Doc, let's keep going. How do you help leaders now recognize and work through these blind spots? Sometimes they don't realize, they're not recognizing that they have these blind spots. So how do you help them to work through it or unhealed experiences that affect how they lead?
Yeah, they're blind spots for a reason, right? Because a lot of our blind spots, our defaults, have actually helped us along the way, which is why we don't notice them, right? They've become kind of like the hidden rules. I typically say the hidden rules on how we govern ourselves. So it's difficult to even recognize that they exist and could be impacting something negatively. For example, right? I love to acquire knowledge, right? Like we just spoke about. And that got me to a certain point in my life. But like you said, there was a pivotal time where I learned that leaders leadership is for learners and not knowers. See, if you're not constantly reflecting and understanding who you are, you can get stuck with your blind spots that once served you but now are hindering you from getting to where you need to go or where you're purposed or destined to go. So a lot of times what blind spots would do is I ask a lot of questions. As a coach, I ask more questions than I give statements, right? And that helps a lot of times while individuals are articulating some of the answers or reflecting on some of the answers, they have some revelations, right? I ask questions like, when did you first? Or what was the first time you have experienced X? For a lot of us, especially Black women, we suffer with perfectionism, right, for many different reasons. So I often ask, like, when was the first time that you felt as though you had to get it absolutely right? Do you remember what happened there? And it's always going back because sometimes, again, we're human, we build up, we use these things to protect us, and they've kept us safe for a very long time, and they've made us successful in other cases. And now we just don't realize how that was good for that season of our life, but for the very next season, for the new problems that you have to solve, for the new people that you have to influence, you have to elevate yourself. And sometimes those blind spots could become roadblocks for you. So again, asking a lot of questions and helping individuals to understand how is that impacting you and how is that getting you closer or farther away from what it is that you're truly seeking. So it's a lot of inner work.
A lot of inner work. And yes, asking those right questions. And I've heard, coaching can have the crossover, I feel. And Doc, you could, if you want to expand on this a little, of where it's kind of like a therapist, right? So getting, the individual to talk it through, right? So asking those right questions, because what do you think will happen, and the doctor's questions for you if you don't ask the right questions?
Oh, I mean, everything's at stake, right? And there's too much at stake because I really do believe everybody is where they're supposed to be at the time that they're supposed to be there. And it's all about, right, if you're able to tap into what it is that you're supposed to be accessing at that time. And some things, right, pass us by. But again, the problems that we're facing as a society now um, are too grave for us not to dig deeper. We have to do it differently. They're the same problems that have been plaguing us for some time. And in order for us to be able to move past ourselves and to build community, we have to dig deep.
Thank you, Doc. Now, of course, just want to interject for a second. If you're watching us on YouTube, welcome. I'm not able to interact with you at this time to answer any questions that you may have, but of course, we'll get to it after. So let's continue on, Doc. What are some strategies leaders can use to build a culture where feedback.
Mm.
Because we're afraid of feedback. We don't want to hear the truth. We don't want to. So yeah, to build a culture where feedback, trust, and truth can coexist. What are some strategies?
That's a really great question. And a lot of what I say is I say start with you, right? So it's a lot easier to feel like you're building a culture for feedback for other people, right? It's easy for us to give feedback. It's not as easy to receive it. And in many cases, one of our blind spots is that we don't necessarily know how we behave when we get feedback, right? So, how do others experience us when we're getting the feedback? Would be the question. So, if you're really serious about building a culture of feedback, I would want examine what do you go through when you get feedback? How do you respond? What feelings come up for you? Do you get defensive? Right? Are you delighted in that feedback? Is there certain feedback that makes you more defensive than others? The first thing I would always do is say, sit with some reflection and say, how do I experience feedback? Because again, it's always easier to give feedback, right? We can critique everything all day long. But once we get it, sometimes it's like, well, that's because of this, or this happened, right? We get to explain away why that feedback exists versus just sitting with the feedback. So if you really want to build a culture of feedback, I would examine what happens when you get feedback. So, for example, one thing that you could do is invite feedback from your teams, from your family members, from your children. Invite feedback. And what I want you to do is really reflect on what is coming up for me. What is happening when I'm getting this feedback? Do I feel like the feedback is different from one individual or another individual, right? Physiologically, do I get hot? Am I getting cold? Am I getting clammy? What's happening? Because all of those things are indicators on how well you're receiving that feedback. Only when you can really receive feedback and then apply that feedback do I believe that you can create a healthy culture of feedback. Otherwise, you'll be creating a space where it's known that you can give feedback but can't receive it. And that doesn't build trust.
Definitely. I like what you shared just then, because some people, it's they removed the feedback component. Like, I don't want to hear it. Or they will, I find that sometimes they try to implement all the feedback, and that's also an issue too, right? Doc, what do you think?
Yeah, that's such a great point that you brought up because sometimes, right, we just want to get it right. And I often say in leadership, there's no getting it right, right? There's no right, right? Everything is a journey. And I often say during my podcast that there's no arrival. So when you try to implement all of the feedback, just think about, right, why am I getting this feedback? Is there any through line in the feedback that I'm getting, right? What's happening in any of my systems that are causing this feedback? I often urge people to be more reflective on what the feedback is, not saying don't address the feedback. If you're in a position to address all of the feedback, that's fantastic. But don't just jump to action. Just jumping to action sometimes could can just kick the can down the road because there's a reason why you're getting this feedback. If you've been able to identify what's the root of this feedback and is it living in my systems? Is it living in the way I show up? That helps you to become a better leader and improve the environment for those who are working with you.
Awesome. So guys, welcome again. And just a little update. We are gearing up for International Women's Conference 2026. Probably say 2026 a long way. It's not. It's around the corner. Things move and we are in the planning stage, guys. So just want to put that out there. It is going to be March 7th and always at Hofstra University. So yeah, that's something we have in the plate, and we're gonna have some great leaders there for sure. So, Doc, can you share an example? Because I'm sure you have many of a small leadership shift that create a big impact.
Yeah, I think a small shift that creates a big impact is daily reflection as a leader, right? We're all after these major outcomes, right? And again, I believe everybody is where they're supposed to be at the time that they're supposed to be there. So are you giving yourself time to really take in everything that has happened, right? What was I after today? Did I get there? If I'm leading teams, how did people experience my leadership today? Is it in alignment with what I said I wanted to do or who I say I am? I think that is as a leader, you're constantly modeling. So if you're modeling all the time, whether you like it or not, or whether you realize it or not, we're modeling. So in a constant state of reflection, if you give yourself space and time to reflect each day on what it was that you were after, how well did you, or how close or not close did you get to getting to what you were after, that puts you in a space where you get to be able to, right, do better the next day, or keep doing some of those things that are working for you. Sometimes things happen. I know sometimes I coached, and sometimes I would implement something that really hit it off, but I wouldn't do it the next time, right? Because I didn't sit and reflect. I didn't realize the impact of that thing. And now that reduces the opportunity for me to A, get better at that thing, and B, maximize on the things that are already working. Because a lot of times we can focus on what isn't working, right? Which is great. However, then we lose sight of what is working, and we forget to really amp up our strength. So I would say daily reflection is the one thing that I implement in order to be a better leader each day, because we're not always getting it right, because it's not about getting it right. It's about showing up better the next day.
What if someone said to you, I don't have time to reflect every day. My schedule is packed. I am running around. What would you say to that person?
I would ask them a question, right? I would ask them to audit their schedule just for the day, right? Just humor me. Tell me all of the things that you did, right? Today. How many of those things were planned? How many of them were unplanned? And right, is there a pattern? Is there a trend? Because a lot of times for those of us who say we don't have time to reflect, we have a lot of time to keep redoing things or keep putting out fires, right? That's where all of our time goes. And how much more valuable would it be for you to reclaim some of that time that goes to putting out fires or redoing something that you've already done if you were able to really be intentional about that? So that's why I say even 5 minutes, 5 minutes of reflection time, just to say, what was I after and did I get there? Why? Start there. I'm not asking you to, I think 30 minutes is a good, healthy daily reflection. However, 5 minutes just to ask yourself a question and to check in with you. Because if not, you'll find yourself doing some of the same things over and over again. If you feel stuck in a rut, I would urge you to reflect because you're probably spending that time times 10 in doing some of the things that you wouldn't have to keep redoing.
And sometimes that we claim we're so busy. Not, yes, they're busy, but then sometimes they're so busy. But as you said, audit your schedule. And if you sometimes you look at your schedule, I'm like, I don't waste that much time on this, right? Yeah, we all go through that. So, what practices help you stay grounded and consistent as a leader? Because although you teach leadership and talk about leadership, you and yourself, you are a leader. You've been in leadership positions and you've created position where you are a CEO and that is a leader. So talk about it, Doc.
I think for me, the way I stay grounded is my faith, right? So it's really important for me to, 'cause I like I say all the time, it's from within, right? So, and if I believe that I am equipped with everything I need to do everything that I have been purposed to do, I have to stay grounded and connect with the God of my understanding. So that's what I do in order to stay grounded, because that reminds me I'm here on purpose. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm equipped. So if I don't feel like I am, I know that then people will be put in place in order for me to learn from, or things will happen or be put into place that will be able to help me. So in order for me to stay grounded and me not to like get off course, because right, things happen,
Right.
discouragement happens, right? Discouragement is real, right? Things disappointment is real. And in order for me not to get off track and stay grounded, I rely on my faith, and that is part of my reflection time, right? Checking in to make sure that I'm connected and grounded, because all of the things come at us all of the time, and I like to be clear and have clarity on what is it that I'm supposed to be after at any given moment.
So true. And some individuals don't realize the power of either you want to say faith or meditating or taking time out, whichever way, say how powerful it is, right? So, yeah, Doc, thank you so much for sharing your insights into leadership. You shared some fabulous information, and I'm sure they're able to take away some information from what you spoke on. So, Doc, how can they reach you?
Oh, you can reach me at youandmeconsulting.com. That is my website. My email address is sdavis at youandmeconsulting.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Shanisha Davis. You can find me on Instagram and YouTube. I have a podcast in the Leadership Lounge with Dr. Shanisha Davis on YouTube and on Spotify.
Awesome, awesome, guys. And we're here on a Wednesday at noon. You could catch us live or you could reach out to us. You see Nevalliance is in the back. You could reach out to us, nevalliance.com, and we can actually have you join where either you participate as a guest. We want experts, though. We really want you to know what you're talking about, such as Dr. Davis that we had today, or you participate by asking questions. But until next time,